Hey guys, today we wanted to share our perspectives.
These perspectives are for educational purposes only.
Brains run on a neurochemical reward system. Today I'm going to attempt to share an in-depth perspective on how our brain is trying to get neurochemicals. Well, dopamine is the precursor to every action. So before anything else, our brain is trying to predict how it's going to meet a hit of dopamine. The first thing that our brain is trying to do is attempt to get dopamine because our safety is above anything else. So our brain is attempting to predict how it can be safe, then it attempts to predict how we're going to meet our other needs, such as serotonin, endorphins, and oxytocin, or any other number of neurochemicals. Dopamine overlaps every other neurochemical. For example, if we're attempting to predict how we're going to get oxytocin, which is the love chemical, if we don't feel loved in the way that we attempted to predict, then we feel out of control, unsafe, or uncertain on how we're going to meet our need for love. If we don't get these needs met, our brains, and therefore us, will literally die. That's why we're always so threatened on the way that we think things should go. We then create expectations for others to meet our needs. Because our brains develop patterns from early childhood perceptions on how we needed to get those needs met. So we perceive that if they are not met that way, that we will quite literally die. This is why we attempt so much to control the external world. But then what happens when we can't control the world around us? It then creates bigger deficiencies in our neurochemicals, or more deficits in our mind, making us feel more unloved, more undervalued, or more out of control. So then how do we meet these needs when we can't meet them externally? We can go inside ourselves and change our perceptions on how we feel. We do this through questioning and attempting to change our internal belief systems. If we can change our perceptions on how we believe we need to meet those needs, we can reprogram our beliefs through neuroplasticity by using our reticular activating system to show us more of how we are loved, how we are valued, or how we are in control. In this practice, we'll learn to meet our needs internally.
Are there any other questions that you have around dopamine?
Well, I was just even thinking about the camera, how we're over here like, oh, there's a camera. But think about it this way. If this camera was always in front of us 24/7, your mind subconsciously is probably some ducks right there.
Oh, yeah. They're bombing in there. Go ahead and keep going. I'm going to watch these for a second.
Yeah. But you're like, the reason, I think what happens is we resolve a lot of these fears subconsciously. Like, if the camera's always in front of you, you're just going to find the certainty, you're going to find ways to meet those neurochemical needs, or your certainty, that's probably the biggest one, in other ways because it's there, and you're like, well, I still want to do this, so you find a way, right, to work through it. And I think that's like the biggest key. Like if you were to put a camera in front of you 24/7, you're going to find a way to work through it, right, and find a way to meet all those needs with the challenge that has came up. And the more you have that challenge in front of you, the more you're going to work through it.
Yeah, and let's think about comfort and knowing as well, because Cameron keeps saying the word knowing. You're going to be certain that you know. Knowing is another one of the associations to dopamine, but also comfort. We've got this camera in front of us right now, and we're not currently comfortable with it because we haven't had it running consistently yet, or constantly. And so it's kind of threatening to us. It creates fears because we're talking in front of who knows how many people, potentially.
Millions.
And you guys are seeing us in our discomfort because of the camera that we're speaking to and not knowing whether we're saying the right things or influencing people, and it makes us uncomfortable.
At some level.
But then at the same time, you think about that, and if you've got a camera and it's staring at you every single day and you're constantly talking to it, you become a lot more comfortable, don't you?
Yeah, you do.
Because then it becomes a thing of the past. You're not looking at it as that camera that used to record you when you were uncomfortable.
I love that.
You're looking at a camera that's now recording you in all your comfort because you've talked to it 1,000 times.
You have that the attempts with the data around the and the certainty. I think that's the biggest one. That's interesting.
Yeah, because you know what to expect.
Right.
Or anticipate.
Yeah,
maybe,
anticipate.
if we want to change that
outcomes.
wording.
Yeah, exactly. That's so interesting. Like, so if you really want to get comfortable with something, have it always in your focus.
Yeah, like I was scared to death to do this podcast. Me and Cameron both were. We had a bunch of insecurities coming up. We were very threatened on whether we wanted to do it. Obviously, we wanted to, and we saw the reward potentially of making the podcast, but we still had all those subconscious fears coming up as to, well, what if it's not good enough? What if it's not something that people want to view or listen to or watch or whatever? And when those fears come into play, it's creating all those discomforts and that uncertainty and the unknowing that we don't currently have. And the biggest thing to get past any fear is to take action. Because if you take action, it's automatically overcoming the fear. Automatically, by default, just because you're acting on the fear.
Yeah, and that creates more motivation because your brain starts to see the rewards it could meet in the thing that you're doing. So that focus, or your RAS is what it's called, your articulating activating system. What you focus on, well, you've heard probably the saying where your focus goes, energy flows, and that's why. It's because that determines what goes into your subconscious between your conscious mind.
Here we are talking. I don't know whether we'll use this or not. We're coming out with some great content already, just talking in the camera. But I'm already getting more comfortable talking to you. And I think my biggest fears are running out of things to talk about currently. And I know I never will. So I don't know why I'm afraid of that. It's just more or less the judgments that I still perceive people might place on me from my perception based off of the information we're attempting to provide.
Notice, Burke's trying to predict what you're going to say, but he can't be certain of that either way. He might be able to have a good idea, but either way, if it happened, what's really the worst that could happen, you know? He's got like more subconscious or childhood fears that are popping up that are the actual association.
Yeah. What are you guys going to do? You going to judge me? Oh no, I'm judged.
Yeah.
Now what?
So, exactly. And also, I would even challenge like judgment, because like where we were yesterday is going to be better than today. And that's what it's about, is the growth, whether we use this or not.
Yeah, there's two definitions of perfection that we learn about through the fly model. There's the definition of perfection that is damned and it cannot be improved upon. And the second definition of perfection is always improving upon itself, which is what most of us would like to live by. And when you get into that state of mind where you focus on the growth and you're constantly growing, then you really don't get threatened, because you realize, oh, well, I can improve from where I was yesterday, or I can improve from where I was a month ago. And when your brain starts to see that growth and that self-improvement, then you don't tend to judge yourself on those past perceptions and beliefs, because you start to see the growth and see the changes that you're presently making, and then it removes the threat. We're only afraid because we judge ourselves from our past. If you didn't place those judgments on yourself based upon your past, and you were just constantly trying to better yourself and move forward, then you would feel great all the time.
Yeah, focusing on what you can do, right? All the growth, because ultimately the thing is, we'll tend to, if we make the same mistake over again, then you just weren't clear enough. Because more than likely, there was something else on your focus with that specific trigger. So it's like stacking triggers. When you stack the triggers, then you're trying to navigate how to do it with those stacks of triggers rather than like these other stacks, right? It's like having different colors that you're trying to learn how to navigate through in a certain way.
So what if you gained more clarity? How much more certain would you be if you attempted new things and you got that clarity in each of your attempts? Because those attempts are what's helping you grow. Obviously, like I said before, if you want to remove fear, just make the attempt, because the more you attempt, the more the fear dissipates.
Yeah. And I would say any level of attempt in the goal that you're going for is going to have massive action internally, and you'll start to work through it. Don't get caught up in the external, Because when you have that internal, that's what drives the external of wanting to take action. So focus on your growth internally more.
Yeah, because we could focus on this podcast and it could potentially go nowhere. And if we were expecting it to go somewhere and it didn't, then we're going to be very disappointed because we were expecting something to happen that never happened. So our dopamine, or our brain predicted that dopamine inaccurately. And that's where the disappointment and the upset feeling and the discomfort all comes from, is that inaccurate prediction error of dopamine. So the best way to still meet that need for that dopamine is just to make the attempt and be certain that you're attempting. And if you're finding that certainty and that comfort in the attempt, then you can't be let down by the end result.
Yeah, because you're not expecting it. You're just like, oh, that's what I learned. You go in with a growth mindset, right?
And how much growth do we get in our attempts? Every attempt, we're gaining some form of growth as well. Even if we don't see the growth in the moment, because our brains do tend to go back to subconscious patterns and we replay the same things over and over again, expecting a different result. But sometimes those attempts to at least just be somebody different and become somebody different and try something different allows us to continue that growth process.
That's what I like in the last one you said, sanity. People are trying the same thing or similar things and expecting the same result. Kinda.
Yeah, that's what the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Exactly.
So essentially, right now, 95% of America is running around insane because we believe by taking the same actions daily, we're going to get a different outcome. But when does it happen?
Yeah.
It doesn't, because you have to become somebody different in order to have something different happen.
Oh, I love what Joe Dispenza said one time. Your personal reality
becomes your personal reality.
Exactly.
Or your personality.
Oh, yeah. Say it again.
Yeah. Your personal reality, this is what Joe Dispenza quotes, or I quote Joe Dispenza. He says, your personal reality becomes your personality.
Yeah. That was really cool.
Or your personality is your personal reality. I don't know how he phrased it, one way or the other. But it's the truth. So it's just like, essentially, whatever we're doing on a daily basis becomes who we are. So we stay the same person and we believe that we're stuck to that identity or that version of ourselves because it's so deep ingrained to us subconsciously by replaying the same programs over and over again. But if you shift the program and you become somebody different, you develop a new personality.
Yeah. And I think we oftentimes stay in our old selves just because, one, that could be a part of your authentic self. So great, keep that. But another part is probably wanting to feel the need for comfort or safety, right? So
yeah, and our friends can pull us back into those old patterns, and we go back into our old version of ourselves because the people around us start to feel discomfort when we're becoming somebody different, and they have the expectation that we're the same version of who we were before. So if they are focused on that old version of us and we're attempting to grow, it's going to create a lot of discomfort in them because they're not used to that and they're not expecting you to grow. They're expecting you to be exactly who you were before.
To meet their needs.
To meet their needs, exactly. Yeah. So glad that Cameron pointed that out. I was going to anyway, but it's always good to have that in there because I feel like that was a very critical thing.
Yeah. And it's just because we're trying to control our whole experience through the external world. And we can elaborate more on the external world. Would you like to?
Sure. What would you? Well, you can go ahead.
I was just going to say the external world is anything outside of yourself and that's not within your control. So another example is somebody else, right? You're not going to be able to control somebody else. That's completely their agency. Like they have their agency. You cannot stop someone from doing something. Now you may be able to have like a consequence, but and tell them, express authentically. This is what I'm going to do if you do da 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 da, right? So that's something you could do, but yeah, you can't ultimately control what they could do because they have their agency.
And if you do control somebody, that's just because they're a people pleaser and they've grown up with that pattern or they developed the perception that it was their responsibility to make somebody happy. And so even if it makes them unhappy, more than likely they're going to choose to attempt to do what you want to do or want them to do to make you happy.
Because they want to feel, oh, I cared. And that's okay. Like, we're not saying, I'm not saying here not to go help people. Help people all the way. However, we tend to do it because we won't feel good enough in ourselves.
Yeah, what ways are you serving other people? Because there's a difference between people pleasing and a difference between service. And it took me a while to recognize that. I was always a people pleaser. I believed that it was my responsibility to make other people happy. And that's people pleasing. That's not me serving them or myself. Because if I'm trying to make them happy and they're not happy because of whatever I did and it didn't live up to their expectations, then they're going to have the perception that I did something wrong. And I'm also going to have the perception that I did something wrong.
Yeah, we'll keep them in the pleasing, way of thinking.
Yeah, so I want to ask you guys, what's the difference from your perception between people-pleasing and service?
Like that.
And I like to now work towards serving others, which is my intent with starting this podcast with Cameron. I would love to serve other people and just contribute. That's a large part of what I'd like to do. It make me feel significant about myself.
Yeah.
But the service is basically what I choose to do on my time, whereas people-pleasing is doing what other people want you to do on their time.
And that typically, not always, but typically usually diminishes your own worth because you perceive you aren't able to do something that would probably potentially grow you more, but you feel like you have to do this other thing, otherwise this thing is going to happen, right? So
yeah, let's just talk about attempting to make somebody happy. Like I said, if their dopamine prediction error thinks, okay, well, they're going to do this for me, and then you live up to that, then it met their expectation, they get their dopamine hit, they remain comfortable and happy. They know that you put forth the effort, they're certain that everything worked out the way that they wanted it to, and so they're happy. But what happens when you do the thing and it didn't live up to their expectations, and then it makes them uncomfortable? They don't know that you did it right. They're not certain. The only thing that they're certain of is that they're disappointed with you because of their high expectations of what they perceived you should have done.
Here's a challenge for you. And it's not to judge either, because we all have these patterns, right? It's just been programmed into us as a child. But I challenge you to go please someone, if you are a people pleaser, and then see where they want to be pleased next.
That's a great idea. A great challenge. Because, yeah, keep on people pleasing. Like Cameron says, if you choose to, if it's serving you, go for it. I think most people pleasers think that it's serving them, but it truly isn't. And the more you start to go inside yourself and unravel that, you start to recognize, oh, I'm not serving myself or that other person. And it's really a sad deal that society has programmed this into us so deeply.
I would just like to elaborate on why I want to do this podcast. I just get so much internal growth from it that's my thing. I'm like, oh yeah, I get lit up, and I just want to share my experience to help people transform and to move on and to go for their goals and live the most fulfilling life that you can. It's possible. The possibility is there for you. So I just wanted that's why I want to do it. Probably to contribute, but also just to grow for myself as well. So it lights me up. I'm just boo.
Oh yeah, that growth is huge. And I'm a person that really wanted that certainty and that dopamine all the time. Because from my perception when I was growing up, it was my responsibility to make everybody happy. And I felt uncomfortable and out of control most of my life because I was constantly trying to please others, which is that people pleasing. It brought up all this discomfort within me because I perceived it was my responsibility to make people happy, and it made me feel so out of control that everything that I tried to do in my life, I then wanted to control. But I realize now that the opposite, for me at least, of control is growth. And when I allow myself to grow, then I can find comfort in that growth. So if I'm finding comfort in the growth, then I'm getting that dopamine hit just in my attempts. And that was huge for me.
Yeah. And I just want to elaborate on the authenticness again. You'll notice we always have these fears of, oh, you'll be lonely, da da da. But the more authentic you are to yourself, the more clear your life gets. and the more high and enthusiastic life and like fulfilling life you're gonna live. I had a feeling to point that out because, yeah.
Yeah, and why do you believe that would be, Cameron?
Because you gain more data on like everything that you want, and then you see what doesn't align. But oftentimes we'll go to the other thing and we'll say, oh, but it won't be this if this happens. But how could you still be that thing that you were wanting to be without that external thing?
All right. You got anything else that you want to bring up?
I think that was pretty good. Again, this was just from our perspective and what we've learned through the Fly program. And it's just helped our lives tremendously. So we just wanted to point out what we've learned from it.
But we can talk about any topic with dopamine and that certainty and comfort. So, like literally anything.
Yeah.
Is there any other thing that you want to bring up besides the relationships or anything like that we could share more information with them?
We could bring up a career. That's not
Okay.
what people want.
So what things do you guys want out of your career? A lot of people go into a career and they are expecting it to go a certain way, and then it doesn't. Let's just say they get fired from a job, and that creates vast amounts of discomfort and uncertainty. So if they went into the job thinking that they're going to have the job for the next 25 or 30 years, and then all of a sudden they get fired after the first week, how uncertain do you think that's going to cause them to be? Yeah, they can sit there and dwell on the job and think of how bad of an employee that they were, or associate, or whatever you want to call it. And their brain is actually getting that certainty through that. Although it's uncomfortable, they believe so much. They're so certain that they were such a bad associate or employee that it's giving them that dopamine hit in an ineffective way. Whereas they could choose to focus on all the areas that they were certain that they were good, even in spite of being fired. Because there's always a gain in every situation. So even if they couldn't find the gain in being fired, they could find the growth and the comfort and the certainty in attempting to make an effort somewhere else.
Yeah.
So if we can frame that certainty around the growth and the things that we want to work towards, then we can feel certain all the time. There really isn't a deficit in dopamine because of the way that you're attempting to predict it. If you're predicting that it has to go one specific way, then it usually never works out that way. And so then because our prediction was inaccurate, then we feel a major deficit in dopamine. It's that dopamine prediction error. But if we find certainty in multiple possibilities and just the attempt itself, then we're constantly getting a dopamine hit because we're certain that we gave it our best effort and we can continue to try.
And oftentimes you'll wonder, why did I go to this judgment pattern? Or why did I go to like even judging someone else? Whatever it is, the version that you use to beat up yourself, it's because your mind at that time had a big loss of that dopamine and it needed a way to get it. And so that's the pattern it knows to do it. Because if you knew of a fantastic way to build yourself up and you got comfortable or knowing in that, then you would do that pattern.
Yeah, because why, if you knew how to build yourself up and you were certain of that and it brought you comfort, would you ever tear yourself down and find discomfort and get your certainty through tearing yourself down? Because your brain is still doing it in an attempt to get a dopamine hit because it's just a belief system. You're so certain that by tearing yourself down that you are the bad thing that you claim that you are in your mind, that your brain is getting a dopamine hit from that thought in itself. But if you were certain in the opposite direction in all the ways that you loved yourself and all the things that you do great and all the things that you valued, then you would still get the same dopamine hit, but it would be bigger, or it would release more dopamine and be more fulfilling to you because your brain is framed around all the comfort that you're getting from being a great person instead of devaluing yourself and finding certainty in the way that you're a bad person.
Yeah, and we do that with other people, by the way. So I want to point that out. I just had a breakthrough around that. That was cool. Just basically, we think that the story is one way. But what if you challenge those stories that aren't serving you and you focused on all the growth? And that's kind of like where my mind went with other people, because we tend to, well, one of my old patterns, especially when I was younger, is I was a jerk to my siblings. And so I've rewired a lot of those. And that, like, there's always going to be patterns, so don't judge. Focus on where you want to grow and keep going. But I recognize how those even could have led to other relationships, and I've been rewiring those now. It's so fun to catch. You're like, oh, there's another one. Then you grow from it, and then you're your new self, right? So
that's interesting that you said that too, Cameron, around we're certain that there's only one way. We're getting a dopamine hit in the very belief system that it has to go a specific way to begin with. Yeah. That's just a prediction our brain is attempting to do. It's got to go this way or else I'm not going to be happy.
Holy crap.
It's got to go this way or else I'm not going to be happy. And so if you're constantly focused on that, then how disappointed are you going to be when it doesn't work out that way?
Open the possibility of it could go another way, and you'd fulfill all the things you want to fill in that new thing. And that would probably be a really great exercise to go do. So I challenge you to do that too.
Yeah, because why do we limit ourselves to one option or possibility? Why do we perceive or believe that it has to go one way? When I say, I'll stick with the word belief for now, because with the societal programs and the way that we currently think, it's a strong belief. But I wanted to bring that up because all a belief is a perception that you've repeated over and over and over again. So it creates a neural pathway in your mind that forms a belief, and then you believe that it has to be just that one way. And so then that's where the triggers come in, is because that neural pathway is so strong that we believe that it's got to be that one way. But there's always another possibility. The thing is we've just wired our brain in such a way that belief system is the only way possible. Whereas if you wired several beliefs or several perceptions at this point, I should say, then that leaves your mind open to possibilities, and you're not limited to only achieving your goal one specific way.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I'm beginning to discover with business, and even my value is I'm starting to see my value at such a higher place, and it's because I see all the different possibilities of where I can create and where I can influence other people. And I find a lot more value in myself because of that. And I know that over time, my value by attempting to influence you is going to help me generate a higher income, which is not necessarily important other than it would make me feel more comfortable. So I'm going to attempt to offer the places that I have value to you guys, and you can decide for yourself how valuable the information I'm attempting to provide is for you.
Yeah. I was gonna say, or you can choose not to, so he can work through those triggers.
Yeah, this is true too. So,
because we're trying, some of these patterns go really deep, and they're like really, like they go like it's crazy how like deep they can go, or how solidified they are in in your brain, right? And I don't know, you got me thinking more, Burke, on like. It really is. We're thinking it's one way. Like, oh, society said this and this. By the way, society, what we mean by that is just how everything's unfolded as a whole, right? So, yeah, what's your perspective on society?
Society? I think society has really screwed us up. Yes, but that's the thing is, based off of the information that the world provides, we form neural pathways once again on how we should believe things, the way that we should see things. It's got to be one way, and if it's not that way, then it's inaccurate, according to society. But society eliminates our ability to be creative and be genius, because there's not only one way to solve any problem.
But it's not to knock it either, not to judge it. We're not judging it.
But what if you were able to be creative and leave it open and allow the possibility for there to be a different outcome or result, rather than expecting everything to be based off of the one that society has placed on us? How are we being creative, and what does it allow us to do, and how is it confining us if society continues to force their beliefs onto everybody? What if there's another option? And we're here to tell you that there is.
There is, yep. And if you don't like, or if you're not interested in this, I encourage you to go find what does light you up, you know? So,
yeah. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to now value people's judgment. And I want to let you guys know that I actually value and encourage your judgment. I'm going to use it for my gain, because I know all the judgments that you place on me, for one, are your own, has nothing to do with me. It's something that you need to work out inside yourself. But two, I can then take those judgments, go inside myself and see where they have triggered me, and work through myself faster to ultimately get to where I want to be.
And we'll gain more information on how to make these videos better, which, that would be awesome. So there's lots of possibility. And I want to reiterate, keep the possibility open, because like as I'm sitting here thinking and having more breakthroughs, it's like, I've been seeing it one way. Because I just bring up relationships because I recently got out of one. So it's just on my RAS, or my focus, right? So I'm just going to bring up relationships again. Apply it to whatever you're working through. But I recognize how I was thinking, I only can meet those needs, right? In this case, it'd be oxytocin or love and connection through that thing, right? If I was like, I thought of this recently, ruminating on the past of what I could have done better. Because if I would have done that thing, then it would have gone a certain way, right? But the thing is, it still could have ended even if I would have done those certain things. It's a possibility. Because that would just be, and not to judge, I'm not judging here, or unconditional love, but that would just be the prediction. Because maybe there was just some on alignment or some other perspective that we just, like, because some people have, like, there's congruent relationships that, like, I just don't think this is working out. And they're just like, then they end it because they saw the gain in the other possibilities.
But from my perception of Cameron's thought pattern is that he believed if he could have done better, he would have received more love. And so obviously he was attempting to gain more love by doing more right. But then when he did those things, or lack thereof, either way, his past relationship made him feel like he was unloved from his perception because of not being able to do that thing, not being able to do better. And so his brain, and that dopamine prediction error, then kicks back in and attempts to be certain of if he would have done better, then he would have got more love.
That is interesting. I can see some level of where I'm doing that, yeah. Definitely. But the thing is you also got to stay authentic to yourself. Authentic in your own self and what you want. And that's why it's important to love yourself. Love yourself first and then love somebody else. It's like putting on that oxygen mask first, right? Because ultimately there's a lot of complexities, more than we know going on. And it's just knowing that, like, even that can help a lot. There's a lot more complexities. You're still figuring it out. Why are you expecting for yourself to be perfect, right? And I would even ask that to myself, because sometimes those little judgments, they sneak in.
Yeah, a new friend of mine painted me a nice mental picture, and I really like the analogy of it, and I'd like to share that now. Let's just say that let's base it off of love, since that's what we're currently talking about. If you were in love with somebody, let's just say you and your wife or your spouse or significant other or whatever were out and you were rock climbing. You were climbing this steep face. You didn't tie yourself up to the rock. So if you were to slip and fall, you would be dead. But your spouse or this other person has a rope. They're able to at least anchor themselves. And let's say that you're climbing this rock face, and because you don't have a rope tied to you, they slip and fall. And in an attempt to save them, you make some mistake and then you fall to your death and die. How are you going to be able to help that other person if you fall into the ground and died when they've got a rope that's able to anchor them in place. But if you're gone, what's the chances of you being able to help them versus if you took a few moments of your time, hurried and anchored yourself to that rock, and then you were able to help them get their footing or their hands back in a position to where they could climb again.
Yeah. Because it kind of goes like, if you got to fulfill your needs first, right? So then that way you, like, because when you get in that high state, think of the highest high you've ever had. Like when you're just super happy, super enthusiastic. When you're there, how many more people are you going to be able to help? Right? Or one person at a higher level when you're in that creative space. So it's about trying to get there, because what I like recognize in my past, one of my past relationships is that what tends to happen is like maybe the other person could have perceived that I should have done better. But the thing is, we are always trying our best at that time, right? And so, and there's a lot of complexities inside ourselves that's going on. And so the more aware you can become of yourself, the more you're going to be able to actually help and have that fulfilling relationship. But if it didn't turn out, it's okay. It's okay. You're still learning. You're still on the path of growth. You're still trying.
So just like what Cameron was saying, think about that. If you were at your highest state and you were able to influence even one person, that one person could go throughout their day, and how many people do you believe that they would influence if they were in that high state? And then they keep influencing people, and they keep influencing people. If you're vibrating at this higher state and frequency, then obviously you're going to influence more people. And even if it is just the one, because you were in such a high state, that person that you influence will then be able to help influence others. But if we're constantly focused on the other way, and we've got a really low energy, and we're presenting to people with a low energy, then that frequency is going to carry, and everybody's going to be running around depressed and not being able of much service to one another because their focus was on all the things that are currently not going right.
Yeah. In other words, this is called the ripple effect. So when you throw a rock in the water, it's going to ripple out. And throwing the rock would be the service, right? Or whatever you did for the person. To help them, because you want to. Because it lights you up at the core.
So my question now would be, how big of a ripple do you want to make? Do you want to throw a little pebble and make a small ripple with your low energy? Or would you rather throw a freaking boulder and make a ripple that people can't escape?
I love that. Yeah. And they can choose to, but you'll still influence at some level.
Exactly, because that's the thing, is we're all not going to vibrate at the same frequency or the same energy. So there's going to be those people that are low because they haven't learned how to go internal and meet their own needs that fulfill them. They're still trying to live up to those societal programs on the ineffective ways that we were taught how to meet our needs. And so there are going to be a lot of people out there with low energy. But if you have such a high energy and you're around even some of those negative people and your energy is so high that they can't bring you down, but then you raise theirs and theirs comes up just a little bit, how much more do you think that high positive energy is going to resonate and vibrate out to multiple people versus that negative energy? Because how many of us typically like to be around that negative energy?
Yeah, we like to feel
I know I
empowered.
sure don't.
I like to feel empowered. So go empower people. Yeah, keep going, and catch where you're meeting your, what you're trying to control, and how could you meet that in another way. So see the possibility, because it's there.
On top of empowering people, if you guys are empowering others, how much more empowered would you feel? Empowerment comes from the empowerment that we put out. If we're attempting to empower people, it's going to make us feel more empowered about ourselves. Because typically that's what we're doing, is we're projecting our beliefs and our feelings and emotions onto other people. So if you're trying to project a negative emotion and you're just beating yourself up and you tell somebody else that they've got to do something because it's their fault or whatever, that's just your projection that they did something to displease you. But in reality, it was your own perception that you allowed yourself to be displeased based off of what they did, because your brain predicted inaccurately on what you think they should do.
Yeah, not allowing them their agency. So again, unconditional love. So yeah.
This world's based on unconditional love and agency. It really is. And once you start to see that, it's a pretty empowering thing.
Oh, yeah.
Because
at a high level.
You'll have ultimate love for everybody around you in spite of what they do, because you're not relying upon them to do anything in particular in order to meet your needs. And because of that, and you've gone inside yourself and you've filled all your own voids, then you find that fulfillment and have that unconditional love when other people are maybe not being the most effective, just because you recognize that that's their own personal internal struggles and it has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, we tend to base or oversimplify a lot with certain things. So, and I'd like to add to that, because like what I'm recognizing at a big level is authenticity is what leads you to the clarity. That one like just really stood out to me, because like the more you are authentic, the more you're gonna be able to actually figure out what you want and the other person wants, and rather than doing this people pleasing, you're being authentic, and which leads to that more clarity, right? And so you're gonna be able to figure out and how to think of a creative solution and how to collaborate with each other.
Now let's look at that from the opposite perspective of what Cameron just pointed out. If you're people pleasing and you're meeting their needs, then how is that allowing them to be authentic with themselves? So it's still inhibiting them and blocking them from being able to be authentic to who they are, because you met their need instead of allowing them to become creative to find a way to meet their own need.
Yeah. And I would say, like, because every time you meet that need, they're going to think that they're going to need that person. And how does it feel? And how does it feel when you need someone versus you want someone? Like, because if you need them and you can't have them, how does that feel? Because you're not always going to be able to have that person. Not all the time, because we all have our own agency and we all have our own things that we're trying to go for. But also, we also have our own needs that we have to attempt to fulfill.
But if you wanted that person and you weren't reliant upon them, then it's more fulfilling, isn't it? Because then you just be like, well, I don't need this person by my side. I don't need them to do anything for me, but I want them because I truly love this person and I value their time. So that becomes different, because then you want it for yourself, but you're not relying upon it in order to feel a specific way, because you're the one that ultimately gets to decide how you choose to feel about anything.
Exactly. It's your agency. And some things may be challenging. I'll admit, I've had some challenging ones. That's just because the wiring in our brains go so deep.
Yeah, we like to chase after that emotion. And that's the thing, is everything that we're doing is for a neurochemical hit. It's our brain runs off that neurochemical reward system. And so our brain, obviously, where dopamine's a precursor to every action, is attempting to get that dopamine hit, but also on top of that, all the other neurochemicals that can tie in around dopamine. So you want to be certain that you're going to be loved, or you want to be certain that you're going to be significant, or you want to be certain that you're going to grow, or you want to be certain that you're going to contribute, so on. So dopamine ties into all of them. So we're trying to experience and predict how we're going to get these emotional needs met. And our brain tends to go external because that's the way that we've been taught by society based off of our perceptions from early childhood development. So we were perceiving when we were growing up that our parents were going to love us and take care of us and nurture us, but only if we did what they wanted us to do. And so we carry that belief system a lot of the time into adulthood, and we perceive that the only way those needs are going to be met is if we continue to please society, to make our parents happy or to make other people happy. And so it starts to like roll over and compound into many areas of your life. And then you perceive that the only way those needs or those emotions are going to get filled is by pleasing other people and doing what they want you to do in order for them to then value you or give you that love that you are looking for. But if you're able to go inside and meet those needs yourself, then you're not relying upon society at all in order to meet those needs. And you can feel whatever emotion you feel like expressing at any given time. because you're not relying on those external things. And the more that you program your reticular activating system to see how those needs are being met in a more effective way, the more you're going to naturally gravitate towards those things.
I just wanted to reiterate some of the people pleasing again, because let's say, what opportunities might you be taking away if you were to build someone up for their whole life? And then what happens when you die and you're not around? Let's just say that. That's just the scenario. Then how are they going to meet that in that significance, right? They're going to then probably not feel great at all because they were so used to getting it that certain way. But what if they could meet that internally, and how that could fulfill them even more?
Yeah, can you imagine that? Where you've been built up your whole life by a specific person, and you're completely reliant upon them to build you up, and now they're gone. You've got to feel like crap if you haven't learned how to do it internally. Because that person, you relied so much on them in order to build your identity that you never learned how to build it for yourself. So you don't even know who you are. And that's what we're trying to teach, is this authenticity, by allowing ourselves the agency and grace to go inside of ourselves, work on our own chemical reward system, meet our own needs so that we're not relying upon somebody else to meet those needs for us, which in turn is what makes us authentic, because then we 100% start to work towards who we truly are inside, because we're not relying upon somebody else to make us feel a certain way.
And that's when the clarity comes in. So find all the ways that you're trying to be certain about one possibility or one thing, and open more possibilities, because they're there, and how you can feel fulfilled if you couldn't have the thing you're expecting to have.
Which this does tie in with our first podcast. Remove all the limits, guys. Get rid of limits.
Remove all limits. How can you live the fulfilling life that you want? And you'll start to get creative, and you'll be like, whoa, that's so cool. So, yeah, keep going and be authentic, because that's what will lead you to more clarity around yourself. And that's just our perspective around what we've learned through Fly and how much it's transformed our own life. So, thanks for watching.
Episode 3 of Beyond the Blind is now in the books. We hope that you guys enjoyed, and I hope that you continue to work towards your own fulfillment.
Keep going.